Welcome to the Merge Podcast, and I'm so excited to share with you about this podcast that we're bringing to you today with a good friend of mine, my big brother TJ Mayfield, a graduate of Alcorn State University, a sports broadcaster, an educator, and a community advocate, and a future politician. And so he'll share with us a little bit about himself and let us know why I threw that last one in, because he has a long lineage of his father is a strong name in the Vicksburg area as pertains to politics and in the state, really. And so I know he's going to talk about that as we discuss about him per se and what he brings to the table as pertains to education, politics, and life itself. And so I want TJ to just share a little bit about himself and tell us who you are and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you for having me on, first of all. I think this interview couldn't have happened at a better time, with everything happening, with the political landscape in Mississippi, especially with education. But for me personally, like you said, a community advocate. So right now I'm working with an organization called Rock United, where we advocate on behalf of restaurant workers. I'm working with the American Heart Association, where we're trying to expand Medicaid with a coalition that we built called Care for Mississippi. Of course, my favorite thing to do is, of course, radio and sports commentating. But first out of college, I started out as an educator. And of course, we all know, black men in education, it's 2% of America. And coincidentally enough, 2% of all presidents in America have been black. So I would like to think we're in the special category. We do great work in the community. Even though I'm not in a classroom or in a school every day, my heart always goes out and supports the teachers, not just in Mississippi, but across the nation.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, I know that you attended Alcorn State and all those different types of things. And so I want to know.
Best decision I ever made in my life. Easily the best decision I ever made in my life. I don't care what nobody say. Where I grew up, where I met my wife, so Alcorn is the best decision I ever made. Yes. That's why I went back twice and got my second degree there. So, yeah.
We're good. We're good friends, and I met you in college as I was there, and I already knew your wife, but you just became a very good brother and friend of mine. And so I want you to talk a little bit about education and where you see it at right now as it pertains to what we're dealing with in education right now. Today, you're going to be watching this later, but today, March 22nd, 2022, we just got a pay raise after so many decades, and then we just got a bill passed that don't make sense. But I'm gonna let you talk about that because you have a deeper depth in that. You're the history buff and all that type of stuff, but it just don't make sense. But I'll let you talk on that.
I'll never understand how, for the life of me, a state like Mississippi is allowed to pass a law like critical race theory. I mean, literally every county, community in Mississippi, we saw the Racist Act. We saw the nooses from trees, and we still see some of the issues that's going on today in Mississippi. So you pass this law that's a political boogeyman for racist people across this nation who believe that, black people are coming for something, or, brown people are coming for something that's yours. And then on the backside of it, you use it as a political ploy, to hurt young people in education. I mean, when I was in a classroom, I taught about everything. We talked about the Black Power move. We talked about the Black Panthers. We talked about Black Wall Street, Loving versus Virginia. And, I'm one of those people that, I look up to and I respect Dr. Martin Luther King. But if you're going to talk about Dr. King, tell the full story. Tell about the fact that in his final speech, he was talking about economic equality and the fact that Black people could finally sit at the lunch counter. But what good was it if they couldn't afford to shop there? So, when we talk about, passing a teacher pay raise, it's long overdue. This is something that should have been done 10 or 15 years ago. I said it on Facebook today, and I continue to say it. We got to stop letting people who send their kids to private school and they went to private school make decisions for public school people. If you never rode a school bus, you don't know what it's like. If you've never been to a school that lack resources, you don't know what it's like. If you've never been in a classroom that has 25, 30 kids, you don't know what it's like. And so for you to turn around and tell teachers for so many years, you don't deserve this salary, you don't deserve these resources, is one of the most abysmal things I've ever heard in my life.
Right. And so I was I was glad today, but I still was sad because it just and the research that I'm doing is just saddens me by the numbers in which I'm seeing, over time of what you're going to pay teachers in Mississippi. And then we have a large fluctuation of teachers that leave and go to Texas and Memphis, just over the state line to get paid more money because we won't take the time to pay them. And so I just see it as a great concern that we're still going to have to work with in that capacity. But I do want to talk about this critical race theory because it's a legal theory. That means that it's not a theory in which you can manifest and kind of blow out of proportion because, like I told you before we got on here, the theory, they had to lash onto something. And although we got multiple theories, they had to lash onto something to make the case of what they are trying to push forward credible. So they're going to push something that's credible and utilize that as a platform to destroy it. Although it's used in a legal platform to help in a critical way. So, yeah.
I mean, if you look at critical race theory, it's only taught in one place in the entire state, Ole Miss Law School.
Correct.
And I wonder how many of those legislators and representatives that voted for it actually sat in one class or actually read the curriculum of that class. I mean, you got to realize Ole Miss, of course, we know the history of it where a guy like Medgar Evers was turned around trying to go to Ole Miss and James Meredith, they literally tore the campus up for him trying to get in. And then you turn around and pass something that you literally could have went to that same campus and learned about it in the first place. So, I mean, that's what it is. Like you said, it's a theory, actual legal theory, but I guarantee you they didn't even read the theory in itself. So it's still a waste of time that y'all went over to the Capitol when you could have been passing teacher pay and you didn't do any research on it, but you just looked at it and said, this is something we're going to latch on to. Right.
And so it is a continual battle that we're going to continue to deal with, that we're going to deal with on a regular basis because of that. And so I just see it as a major weakness to our system, and a setback for our educational system because it's not going to do anything to the educational system. We have other things that we have to deal with.
Well, the problem I have is, we look at a lot of people who will say, we need to leave the Confederate monuments alone, or we don't want to touch history too much. And then when I want to go and teach that same history, you don't want me to teach it. You contradict yourself as it is.
Correct.
But you waste time and money in doing so.
Correct. And so they don't want to do like what what Malcolm Gladwell talks about, revisionist history, is going back and telling the truth about what happened and being truthful about it, and allowing that to be the thing that inspires the younger generation to recognize what actually happened. Some of us had to go back and tell the real story about Christopher Columbus, because if we did not, then young people would be out there celebrating Christopher Columbus, and he did all the things that he did to black people. Nobody,
raper than a murderer.
If nobody talks about it. Yeah. So it's a strong issue, and so you, as a person that is working in that stream now, leaving education and stuff like that. So how's the transitioning going from leaving education and stepping into being campaign managers and working in other spheres of nonprofits and stuff like that to get things done?
Well, when you introduced me, you talked about my political background. And like you mentioned, my dad has been in politics all my life. I watched as a young kid what my grandfather did with social justice, how he fought. Literally in the 1960s, he could have been killed for trying to give black people the right to vote. And so for me, that's who I am. That blood is inside of me. So I can't, turn my back on something I've always felt was an obligation for me growing up as a kid. For leaving education, it was difficult because, like I said, being a black man in a classroom, that's something most kids don't see every day. I taught high school, and I can't tell you the amount of kids told me that I was their first black male teacher. Some of these kids are 11th or 12th grade, and their first black male teacher is a guy who was 22, 23, educating them. And so for a lot of them, it became something like a big brother role. Some of these kids still call me. They still text me. They'll send me a message on Facebook or whatever. And so that was the difficult part. But as far as stepping into the role of a campaign manager or organizer or lobbyist, that was the easy part because I was already doing it. I just wasn't getting paid to do it. And so now when I look at it, it's just something, it's always been a part of me, campaigning for my dad at a young age, public speaking, that's something that I had already done. But I think the great thing about it is you still see that even though, I'm not in education, there's other people in need. I look at working at Rock United Restaurant Opportunity Center. I didn't know that there's a lot of people in the restaurant industry, such as servers, bartenders, they still make $2.13 an hour. And, we look at a gallon of gas right now at $4. So essentially, you got to work 2 hours to be able to afford a gallon of gas right now. And with the American Heart Association trying to expand Medicaid, as somebody who's had health problems, who's had a kidney transplant, who was on dialysis, I know the cost of it. I know what it's like to have to go get insulin. But if I couldn't afford my insulin when my blood sugar was 400 one time because I was on so many steroids after my surgery, I would have died. But what about that person that can't afford it? What about that person who can't go to the doctor and they find blood in his urine, but you just can't see with the naked eye? So all of those things make me think that there's always somebody in need, whether it's in education, healthcare, the labor industry. No matter where I work, no matter what I do, I'm working to service people.
Yeah. Well, that's good, TJ. I like that. I like that point of always being able to be of service. And so I know that you are desiring, I know you have not told us yet, but I know that you are desiring to go back and to run again and run in a political office to do some major change and to be change for our generation. And so I want to talk about how your father's influence on you as pertains to politics helped you to run for office at the time that you did. And then what do you see down the line as pertains to you running for office in the future?
It's crazy. When I ran for office, everybody was like, You know, the only reason he doing it because his dad had put him up to, and I was like, my dad, when I saw what he went through all of the years, if you had seen it firsthand, I probably would have went the other way. But you know, his influence, you know, he never once, never has, never will push me in the direction of any job. That's just not who he was, because, you know, for my dad, it was always, what do you want to do? You know, don't get into something and hate it because, you know, I do it or your mom does it or whatever. You know, my decision to run for office or get in politics, that's my decision. You know, whatever I say on this camera, it's a reflection of me. Whatever I say on Facebook or on any other website or whatever, that's my thoughts. That's how I feel. That's what I believe. You know, for me, you know, looking at politics, there's so many different ways, like I said, you can help people. And when I look at it, you know, I'm not sure if there's going to be on a local level that I want to do, because, you know, I want to help people in the labor industry. I want to help people in the medical and the healthcare field. I want to help people in education. I want to help people in infrastructure. There's so many different ways you can help people. And, you know, I just got to weigh my options. You know, you never know what's going to come up. I feel like I'm a great candidate no matter what I run for, no matter what I do, because I work hard. I let my work speak for itself. And you can ask anybody that's worked with me or for me or around me. I put first things first. You know, I'm not there for you know, a personal relationship or whatever. Whatever I'm doing to benefit somebody else. And at the end of the day, when I go home, you know, I can lay my head on the pillow and not have to worry about what anybody got to say. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, I state what I got to say and move on.
And that's the best thing to do and best thing to be. We have the same philosophy, and so as a educator myself, I see that it's a constant battle to remain in education with all the things that happen in education, especially as a Black male. It's very hard to remain. And so I want to understand how has the transformation from education to politics helped to frame where you are, and what are some of the qualities that you were able to obtain from those from education and your earlier stages in politics to help in what you're doing now?
Well, you know, the funny thing about it, you know this just as well as anybody else. When you're an educator, you have to put up so many skills and talents that make you successful. You have to be able to manage people, relationship build, communication, be great at organizing, you know, leading people. And that's in any field. I mean, if you take a teacher out of a classroom, you can pretty much put them in any field in America, because it's skills and knowledge that it takes to be a successful teacher. You know, I can put that into being a lawyer. I can put that into being an engineer, a lobbyist, a politician, because it just goes to show you how talented, how much time teachers put into their craft. And, you know, when I left education, it was just like I had stepped into a different field, but I was doing the same thing. Like I said, relationship building, organizing people. And then you realize, you know, the older people grow, they don't really change as much as we think they do. Your personalities, a lot of time, you know, I'm teaching high school. A lot of time, your personality is already set. You know, some of us may grow in our belief systems, but a lot of us don't. And so you will see that being an educator, it was an easy transition, but I think it would have been an easy transition into any field. So if I went to be an insurance agent, if I went, you know, even though I do real estate now, it's the same thing, relationship building, you know, being organized, being able to communicate with people. All of those things will translate into anything in America. And it just goes to show you how powerful and how successful it takes a person to be a great teacher.
And so as a future voice in the world of politics, and being a an agent for education and for our young people. I want to know, what do you foresee down the line, and what do you want to see change as it pertains to what we're doing now?
Just an education
and in politics itself. What do you want to see change as it pertains to our generation coming in and being the face of education and politics for the future?
For education, two things that I want. I want more black males in the classroom. And I know that's going to take a lot of money.
Okay.
I know that's going to take effort. Because, you know, having a black male in the classroom, you know, it changes lives. We've seen the statistics over the years. What is it? If you have a black male by the third grade, you know, you're X amount exponentially better at graduating. So the research is there. The studies are clear that having a powerful black man in the classroom, you know, is great. Because for a lot of young black kids outside of church, we don't see a lot of kids, you know, a lot of black men in powerful positions. When you get kids that see somebody that look like them and tell them they can do something, it's different. The second thing I want in education is stop wasting money on state tests. You're wasting money that you can be put in a different area, that teachers can be paid with. You can put better resources in schools. I mean, you still have schools around the country that don't have heat. That don't have the adequate books and computers and other resources that they can use to educate the kids, but you're wasting time educating them on how to take a test. We both know, you know, these tests are wasting time and money. When these young people can be exploring different ways to learn, you know, taking what they've learned in their community and take it to school instead of having to suppress that when they get inside the walls of a classroom. As far as politics, the one thing that I want to see different, there's so many ways to go with this, but I want to see money being used wisely. I want to see money being put into areas that benefit people. We look at a city like Jackson that has struggled with infrastructure for so many years. You know, potholes and water problems. I mean, you have people in these areas where, you know, if it rains too hard or it storms, they don't have water. There's no way for anybody to live. And, you know, I've seen people live in certain situations that were downright depressing. And so now we look at, you know, so many different things. The housing market is horrible. Gas is $4+ and, you know, we barely getting cars here. There's so many different ways we can use money, educate our kids better. Like I said, the infrastructure, healthcare. I mean, what's wrong with getting people? We say we're pro-life until it's time to let people live longer. Even in Mississippi, they killed a postpartum bill. And for a man myself and my wife, who has a newborn, why wouldn't you want a mother at home with his child longer? There's so many different ways we can go with politics in America, but use the money wisely. You know, don't rip off taxpayers. You know, don't waste it on critical race theory. Put it where people can use it and in need.
Right. And that's the key thing is being able to utilize funding in the right way, and over doing research and looking over certain legal cases over time. As you know, I'm doing Alexander v. Holmes and looking at the funding and the separation and all those different things that were taking place. It's sad. But at the same time, it shows what we're fighting for and what we are desiring to see change. And at the time, I didn't understand why my principal at the time was sending me on the bus to go around Holmes County to ride and see homes of children that were coming to my classroom.
It's depressing.
Some of them were the children that were, some of the children were the children that were behavior issues. Right. And I went into I went in on the bus, rode the bus, And I came back with a different perspective. It changed me. And my whole perspective of how I approached the child was different, to where now I was able to develop a relationship with the child. Because I saw...
You talk about, the housing of a lot of kids. I'm currently reading a book now. I'm almost finished, called The Color of Law. And with me being a real estate agent, I was very intrigued to read it, because it talks about how America essentially kept black people out of buying property, out of buying homes.
Right.
There was a part in that book in the beginning where it talked about, how I was taught in school, how Franklin Roosevelt was the greatest president of all time. He got us out of the Great Depression. He got us through World War II and all of that. And then I read something, and it changed my entire perspective. It talked about how when he went to pass the New Deal, he knew he couldn't pass it without the vote of Southern representatives and senators. And so in order for him to pass, legislation about minimum wage and jobs, the only way he could do it is if he told them he wouldn't touch agriculture. And so, of course, we all know agriculture is essentially slavery. Who was in the field working for a quarter a day? We all know it was black people. Well, if they couldn't afford property, then you still have to live in, you're renting houses from somebody that is not worth it, or you'll never be able to afford to get the property that you want. And that happened in Chicago, that happened in Detroit, that happened in New York, that happened in LA, that happened in San Francisco. So even when black people moved around the country, the fact that they couldn't afford their property, that meant overcrowded schools. That meant, you probably got kids going to school half a day. Well, if you got kids going to school for half a day, who's going to watch them? Then crime leads from that, and drugs lead from that. So, like we said, we ride around these communities and you see how these kids live, and it then makes sense. Oh, I understand why you're upset. I understand why you're hurting. I understand why you're having problems focusing in school. Yeah. Because you got bigger things to worry about at the house.
Yeah. Like one of the houses I passed by, there was no door on the house. Yeah. And then when you looked inside the house, there was a big hole in the floor. And so I'm like, this child is living like this? And I'm like amazed. And so, TJ is a father too. So if you hear the baby crying, that's what it is.
Right.
Newly a new father. So
yeah, man.
But anyway,
that's my joy. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a sad situation, and it's a continual thing that we as brothers and other people are going to have to address and bring to the forefront.
Yeah.
And to bring to that, I want to talk about Alcorn, because Alcorn, I believe, changed all of our lives. Every person that goes to Alcorn, your life has changed.
Absolutely.
Especially if you stay there the entire time. But but your life has changed from freshman to senior year. And so I want to talk about the people that inspired you on campus. And I want you to talk about 3 people that inspired you at Alcorn, because I know that Alcorn is your home as well as is mine, because, it's just nothing like Alcorn. I just say it like that. For all my Alcorn people and all my Jacksonian people that's watching the podcast, I'm sorry, Jackson State. I'm from Jackson, but I rip Alcorn all day. But I'm very excited that I have an Alcorn brother on here to talk to me about something about Alcorn. And what do you think about the future of Alcorn as pertains to what you're seeing on campus right now?
Before I get to that, let me just talk about how I got to Alcorn. I remember, I was a senior in high school, and I had a white lady who was my counselor, and we were talking about colleges and everything, and she was so hell bent on me going to USM. And so I remember one day I think it was like a week before graduation, something like that. I woke up on a Saturday. It was just something hit me. I said, I'm going to Alcorn. And so I go into my counselor's office and I told her, and she looked me in my eyes and she told me, don't go to Alcorn, that's a bad school. And I said, from that moment on, everything that I do, I'm going to prove her wrong. And so, like I said, I go to Alcorn and, you know, my life has changed. You know, my high school was predominantly white. And I'll tell anybody, for my first semester at Alcorn, I didn't like it. It was a culture shock. You know, I had never been in classes with all black people. You know, my teachers were all white. From 8th grade to roughly 11th grade, I was either the only black person or the only black male, if not all of my classes, but a lot of my classes. And so, like I said, it was a culture shock. But I did have some professors who helped me along the way. And coincidentally enough, two of the professors that helped me, they were white. A guy who I still look up to and talk to, Dr. Greenfield. He came to my wedding, you know, gave me a lot of great advice. He changed my life because he told me I was selling myself short. I told him one day that I wanted to be a school superintendent. And he said, you know, that's great and you'll do a great job, but that's not all you can do in life. It said, I inspire you. You know, I want you to reach higher, do something greater. Be afraid. Make your, you know, let your goals make you afraid. And that's when, you know, you're dreaming in the right place. Dr. Aaron Anderson, another white professor that I had who actually gave me the ability to speak in public. You know, he saw something in me. He made me the history club president my freshman year when I was struggling. You know, I didn't fit in anywhere, and they gave me a place to fit in and, you know, give me the opportunity. And then finally is Dr. Stephen Hall. He was another history professor that I had who, like I said, still talk to him today. And all of those gave me, you know, a different perspective of life. They have been around the country, been around the world, but it was something that they saw in me that made me believe. You know, I didn't believe in myself at first. But the opportunity for somebody to say, hey, you can speak in public. You can lead an organization. You can be great at whatever you do. That changed my life. You know, like I said, I had my dad. I still have my dad. But just to have somebody in the education tell me, you know, there's a lot more you can do with your life. You know, thankfully enough, I tell anybody, you know, Alcorn is the greatest decision I've ever made in my life. Easily. Not close. And I know somebody may be saying, well, you know, what about your wife? What about your child? I don't meet my wife if it's not for Alcorn. You know, we got married at Alcorn's campus. You know, we stayed in the president's house that night. Alcorn State University, you know, there's a reason I send money down there every month. And despite what may be going on right now, I know it's going to get better. You know, we've seen dark times, you know, at HBCUs. That's why I got the hoodie on right now, support black colleges. When you don't have enough money, of course, there's going to be fighting somewhere. Somebody's not going to be happy. Things are not going to get done in the way that we want. But I forever support Alcorn State University because they supported me when I didn't even think I could be great myself.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's going to be a good transition for Alcorn and for other HBCUs with all this happening, sports and you know, and it's nothing like tailgating. It's nothing like football, Alcorn football. You know, nothing like that. You know, Jackson State think they can top us. They can top us on that, but I don't think so.
They ain't got it.
No, not at all. So. I'm just so excited to see what's going to happen at Alcorn over the next few years, and having our brother Tommy down there, and shout out to Tommy and some other folks that's still there trying to push it forward and get alum to, you know, still donate and be a part of the process of making sure that Alcorn is still moving forward is essential. And, you know, if if you go to a college campus, support your college campus. If you don't have one that you ain't got one to support, you can support us. Just support Alcorn, and we'll be so happy.
That's something that I think we as Black people haven't stressed enough over the years. Giving back to your college. If it gave you a great experience, if it changed your life, well, give back to it. Even if it's $20, $25 a month, give something back, because you never know how that's going to benefit whether the university itself or some young person who's trying to get an education.
And the best thing for us is to, as we progress and move forward and increase in our finances and all that type of stuff, is to begin to do foundations in our names and use those foundations to provide scholarships and grants for research and stuff like that. Just the future, because if our other big colleges and universities like State and Ole Miss can do it, you can do it too.
I agree.
And provide the same thing for them. And so my family right now is working on that right now to try to get my last name to become a foundation and to begin to give back to our community and give back to HBCUs itself.
That's one thing I'm proud of, that I was able to start. My grandfather, who was a sharecropper, didn't get more than a 6th grade education. Always wish he could have got, as he called it, that piece of paper. Wish he could have got a degree. Wish he could have finished high school and all of that. So, I'm thankful that we were able to start a scholarship in his name, because he stood for education. He was a Baptist minister who, like I said, could have been killed for getting people the right to vote. But the fact of the matter is, he still wanted all his kids to be educated. And education was more than just going to a class and sitting down and wasting time. It's how can you benefit yourself and your family by learning something? It doesn't have to necessarily be a formal education, but can you legally, financially take care of your family?
Right. And so now I want to end on this note. I got about 2 or 3 more questions, but I want to end on this note about what are some books that you would recommend to people that are trying to know more about either education or politics, are some books that you would recommend that you love yourself, that have inspired you and moved you into the next area?
Yeah, so like I said, the one I enjoy now, of course, The Color of Law, which talks about how America basically kept Black people out of owning land. You mentioned earlier I'm a sportscaster, so I'm going to plug my radio show in. I host the Morning Blitz, TJ and Nick B. 8:15 every Friday, News Talk 1490, 107.7 FM. But another book that I love is $40 Million Slaves. It talks about how, similarly, when integration happened, one of the first things that they did was grab Black athletes. They weren't in a rush to add Black students to universities. But Black athletes was a group of people that they were, willing to include. So that's one, $40 Million Slaves. It's another one that's slipping my mind right now. I Ain't Coming Back by Dolphus Weary. It's about a gentleman who's from Simpson County, Mississippi. And he talks about, his growth in life. It talks about the 1950s and 60s and 70s, how Simpson County, Mississippi didn't even have, a place for Black people to go for medical attention. So he had to get grants and he had to get funds and, all of that just to help Black people get medical care. Of course, the biography of Malcolm X. That's one of my favorite, obviously. And, one of the reasons why it's my favorite is easily because Malcolm said 2 things in there that really makes me think. He said he always wears a watch. And he said because once he understood the concept of time, and that was all he had, his life changed. A lot of people forget all God is going to give you is a certain amount of time. And if you waste that away, you can't get it back. And he also talked about when he was in prison,
Right.
That was the best thing for him because he could finally focus. You know, he didn't have to worry about the streets. He didn't have to worry about, you know, trying to run numbers or running up behind somebody or, you know, going to somebody's house. And so those were two things that I really appreciate about Malcolm X. There's a lot of them that's kind of slipping my mind right now, but those are some of my favorites that, you know, I think about often when it comes to my philosophy in life.
Okay. All right. And so I am so excited to be able to enjoy this podcast with my brother TJ Mayfield. And my last question, TJ, is what does merge mean to you? What does merge mean to you?
Merge means inclusion. It means incorporating different thought processes and viewpoints. Because for a lot of us, we look at life and, you know, we only look at life in a way that we see things. Like you talked about when you went to look at that house that didn't have a door and it had a hole in the floor, immediately you had to merge that kid's experience with your experience, and it kind of humbled you. It's similar to me. I've been humbled being in education. I had a kid, you know, I asked him, you know, hey man, why you didn't do your homework? He said, Mr. Mayfield, I had to get my little sister ready for school. I had to cook dinner. I had to make sure that their homework was done. He said, I didn't have time to do it. And so even as a man at that point, you know, I didn't have kids that I had to get ready for school. I didn't have to worry about, you know, taking care of them and their safety and their well-being. So I had to incorporate his experience, the way he viewed life. And a lot of people, I mean, that's what I have to do. I have to merge what they know, what I know, and to make myself, you know, have more wisdom, more understanding, and more knowledge that way, because I'm not going to learn everything from a book. You got to learn from some people, whether that person you think is smarter than you or not, somebody knows more than you somewhere. Whether it's, you know, athletics, academics, whether it's whatever it is, auto mechanics. You have to learn to merge what other people know, what you know. That's how you learn more, and you can get into different conversations that way.
Right. Well, I know, TJ, we're gonna bring you on for regular conversations from time to time. And, you know, this is something we were already talking about doing a podcast together, but you know, I knew that we're going to have a hot topic today. Talking about what just happened. And so I enjoyed my conversation with you today, and I was able to gain a lot of wisdom from you as pertains to how to further myself in the world of politics and education. And so I hope that you enjoyed it as well, my wonderful mergers, and that as you go along in this day, that you begin to bring things together and allow your life to be an instrument to someone else. See you later. Peace.
Peace.